What's up YouTube, this is Tubedigga. In this video I'm going to show you a few little tricks and tips to get your loop sounding a bit smoother in the Akai Mpc Live. For this project I've got one program, it's just using one sample split over most of the pads in the first pad bank. The sample is called Garcia Hooter Roll, so it's a sample from an album by Jerry Garcia from 1971 called Hooter Roll. Go and check that out if you want, it's some nice jazz prog rock fusion. Anyway, I found this nice section which sounds like some guitar plucks and maybe a Rhodes, so I'll just play that back to you. So I've got that spread over most of the pads in this program. There's a couple of pads that I'm not using. So the first pad I just play back to you at 0 semitones at its bass pitch. So I'm going to return that back to -9 for the ambient piece that I want to play you. So that will now sound like this. Okay, just a bit lower. There's nothing else going on with that pad. There's no other effects or anything going on. It's not looping, it's literally just going to play from the start. But I've got that put in the sequence to just do this. So that will just give me a nice little rhythm for the ambient drone piece that I'll do towards the end of the video. Now the second pad is just a different section of that same sample. I've got a bit of low pass filter going on there. There's no LFO modulation, but as you can see the sample play is set to note on and it's looping, so it's in reverse loop mode. So if I hold the note, you can hear that loop. Now there's a click in there, and this is something that I really want Akai to address, is crossfading on looped samples. But if you want a lot more of a smoother loop, then always go for the ping pong or the reverse mode. The next tip to try and get your loops a bit smoother is this settings cog up here. If you press that, you've got this option, 0 snap, on or off. What 0 snap is, if you don't know already, as you can see there's a black line behind our sample, and wherever the waveform crosses that black line, that's what's known as zero crossing. It's just basically where you've got, say on the vertical axis, you've got power or amplitude in audio signal processing terms, and then time is your horizontal axis. It's just where that waveform crosses that point. If we didn't have it set to 0 snap, then we can freely scroll, but then that's when you start getting clicks. When the loop starts to loop around, it's hitting this point here, but then when you go to the end point, it might be hitting somewhere else completely random. You're more likely to get a smoother loop if you set the 0 snap to on, and it helps you locate a more appropriate place for the sample to loop. It won't correct the current clicks and pops that you get in loops on the Akai Mpc Live's current operating system, but hopefully Akai will implement something where we'll get like a crossfade loop function. But yeah, to save a bit of time, you know, sort of scrolling around trying to get that sort of fine loop point, definitely your 0 snap will definitely help if you set that to on. Loop lock also, the default is set to on. I've got mine switched to off, and that will allow you to set a individual start point for the loop. So as you can see, my loop on pad 2, it's literally just doing a normal cycle from start to end. But if I move the loop point, now my sample will start from the start but loop in this area. What else can we do to get our loops smoother? Well, as you notice, this is a mono sample. Let's go to our sample editor and I've got the stereo version of this sample loaded in. So the most obvious reason why we would use mono samples to loop, because it's stereo, over time the sound wave is doing different things on the left channel and the right channel. So just that in itself will introduce more problems when trying to find the zero crossing, because the zero crossings will be different. You know, even if we're looking at the exact same position in this sample, as you can see there's a peak there on the left channel. You know, there's more amplitude here and less on the right channel, and so on and so forth. There's points in this sample, see there's a lot of things going on the left side here, and on the right side there's not. So trying to find a smooth loop will be considerably more difficult when dealing with stereo samples. This video is also to show you how versatile the MPC Live is at doing ambient and drone stuff and nice delicate stuff rather than just beats. I'll just take you through some more of the samples and show you what I've done to some of the pads. I covered the first two. On the third pad, it's got a high pass filter, it's got a stereo delay, and it's just looping around a small section of the sample there. Okay. And I've set the semitones to be in key with the other pads. This one is warped because I quite liked the wonkiness of that warp, and then I copied that pad to the pad above it. So pad A4, I copied that to pad A8, and that's without the warp, so you hear a bit more of the sample. Neither of those loop, but pad A4 evolves over a longer period of time because I've stretched it to 400%. Just a note on the stretching, don't ignore the BPM counter here, because the stretch alone will give you certain results. Let's just put that to 0 to show you what I mean. So that's it with the BPM set to 20. Okay, if we put BPM sync on, it then syncs that. Okay, but then if we adjust this up to like 400 BPMs, that's when you really start getting things being stretched out. Okay. I mentioned in a previous video about the artifacts that you get when warping, and I don't really like them, but there's going to be some situations where that's a positive thing and it just works. You know, the timbre and the texture of that sound when warped will work in certain situations. On pad 5, I've got a really high pitched and warped and stretched out version of that with a high pass filter on, and that should also have a delay effect. Pad 2, pad 6, 10 and 14 have all got the same section of the sample, but I've just literally created some nice different pitches of that. They're all looped to reverse. Oh, actually, the first is reverse, the others are ping pong for some reason. So they're pretty smooth. What else have we got? So I've got this nice kind of, again, this sort of crackly, kind of sounds a bit bluesy for some reason, like a really cheap banjo or something that's kind of looping around there. And then another version of that on A11 that's pitched down a bit. So I've done it in kind of columns, if you see what I mean. My first column of pads is random, but the second column is these similar tones. And the third column is, yeah. So as you can see, I'm just going up through the pads there. That's quite a nice one on pad 9. It's a really fast loop of this end section of the sample. Gives you like a nice ringing out bell sound. And then there's a higher pitched version of that on pad 13. So that's one program using one sample, and I've just applied a few quite simple adjustments within the program editor. So I've copied the first pad to the last pad. I'm just going to change the filter type to high. High 2. Give it a nice bit of crusty, dusty noise. And I'm going to jam over the top of that along with the other pads. And I'm going to do some live start point adjustments to see what happens with that. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video, guys, and got a few little tips and tricks out of it. I'm just going to let this play out now, so hopefully you enjoy the piece, and I will see you in the next video. This is Tubedigga, and I'm out.